My name is Desta Mebratu. I'm an extraordinary professor at the Stellenbosch University in South Africa, and I'm also the lead for the United Nations High-Level Champions Initiative on open waste burning. This initiative is part of the Race to Zero strategic program of the UN High-Level Champions on climate change. And it is implemented in partnership with Engineering X program of the Royal Academy of Engineering and the Lloyd's Registered Foundation in the United Kingdom. The initiative aims at creating the required level of awareness and appreciation on the scope of the challenge and the associated opportunities from addressing open burning of waste. It also provides the platform for addressing the issue in a more coordinated way with different stakeholders as part of the preparation for COP27. And it works towards a multi-stakeholder partnership commitment to phase out open burning of waste from Africa by 2040. Well, open burning of waste has been one of the oldest methods of waste disposal practiced by all societies and countries across the world. However, the increasing volume and complexity of consumption and production waste associated with the Industrial Revolution led to the development of different waste treatment and disposal techniques and technologies over the last 2 centuries. Based on this, developed countries built different scales of waste management systems for most urban centers, thereby enabling them to move away from open burning of waste. Unfortunately, open burning of waste is still widely practiced in most developing countries due to the lack of the necessary waste management infrastructure to handle the volume of waste that each of the countries are generating. According to the synthesis report on open burning of waste, which has just been published under this initiative, 26% of waste produced globally is openly burned at the residential level, while 15% of waste produced is spontaneously burned at dump sites, resulting in about 11% of the global black carbon emission. Moreover, emissions from solid waste driven by open dumps and landfills accounts for about 5 to 12% of total global greenhouse gas emissions, while methane generated from decomposing organic waste accounts to around 20% of global methane. Looking at the health side, open burning of waste accounts for 29% of fine particulate matter, pollutants in the air, and this together with other pollutants cause nearly 1.2 million premature deaths per year in Africa. So the issue of open burning has a very strong climate dimension, broad environmental dimension related to air pollution, and broad social dimensions related to its health impact, particularly in poor communities across the developing world. About 90% of waste in low-income African countries is openly dumped or burned, while the waste collection coverage is only about 44% across African countries. 11% of the waste is disposed. It's only 11% of the waste that is disposed in properly designed and managed landfills, sanitary landfills. And only about 10% of the waste is recycled, largely through the informal waste management service providers and waste pickers operating in Africa. Now, looking at the profile of the waste generated by African countries, more than 60% of the waste generated in African urban centers is more biodegradable materials, and about 20% of the overall waste is recyclable, which includes plastics, papers, metals, and other recyclable materials. So this provides the basis for the opportunities that African countries have. And according to the estimate made by the United Nations Environment Program, the overall value of municipal solid waste generated in African urban areas, which could have been used as secondary resource, amounts to about $8 billion per annum, of which 96% of it is currently lost through open dumping and disposal of waste, uncontrolled disposal of waste across Africa. So for African countries, there is significant opportunity to develop waste as a secondary resource input and thereby generate thousands of jobs and economic opportunities, providing sustainable livelihoods, particularly to those communities that are living around waste disposal sites and the areas. And in that regard, working with the informal sector, the informal waste management service providers and waste pickers, and organizing them to be involved in meaningful local beneficiation of this secondary resource will ensure more jobs and livelihoods while reducing the health impact on the local communities. And that is where our opportunities are. And this would require addressing the systemic deficiency that we have within the waste management infrastructure across African countries. Well, under this open waste burning initiative, one of the primary focus was to have a knowledge product that consolidates the existing information we have in different sources and have a good understanding of the scope of the problem and what are the major challenges and where are the opportunities for interventions. And this report is now finalized and launched online, and it will be launched formally at the African Cities Summit that will be held in Kisumu, Kenya next week. And the report provides a lot of suggestions and recommendations as to how African countries and particularly African urban centers and development partners could address this growing problem with the increasing rate of urbanization that we have in Africa and with the change of consumption and production patterns, which contributes to higher complexity of the waste that will be generated from African urban centers. It will be very, very critical for African urban centers, African governments, and development partners to work together in addressing this problem. And the report recommends that we need to move away from piecemeal interventions and focus on achieving systemic transformation with a primary focus on the use of waste as a secondary resource input and addressing the systemic deficiencies of waste management systems in African urban centers based on integrated solid waste management approach, which would give priority to prevention, reduction, and then recycling and reuse, and focus on treatment disposal as the final options so that African countries can improve their urban environment while at the same time contributing to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions at a global level. And this would require change at 4 levels, which are attitudinal change, which includes changing the mindset of general public and policymakers on waste generation and management. We need to also have institutional change, introducing and enforcing contextual regulation that prohibits open burning and introduce economic instruments that incentivize waste reduction and utilization as secondary resource, which will lead to promoting more circularity in African economies. We need also to have change at the infrastructural level with a focus on building efficient infrastructural mix with distributed grid that promotes inclusivity of the informal sector and reduce the environmental and climate impact as a central focus. And we also need to build operational and technical skill sets that African countries need to implement an integrated waste management hierarchy. So the report highlights all these actions that could be taken at various levels, and hope it is expected to serve as a good source of information and guidance for actions at various levels. Now, related to the road to COP27, we have been engaging right from the beginning of this session with different partners, including at those partners who are working with urban institutions, African urban centers, international organizations, private sector actors, and so on, including those who are working with informal sectors. And we will continue to engage with these partners based on the report that I just mentioned. We have already prepared a draft call for action on phasing out open burning of waste from Africa. And this will be the basis for our subsequent engagement during the Afri-Cities Summit, the African Climate Week, and including the African Ministerial Conference on Environment that is going to be held in September. And this hopefully will help us to develop a consensus building on possible targets that may include reducing open waste burning in Africa by 60% by 2030 and phasing out open waste burning from Africa by 2040. And our expectation is by the time we meet at COP27, we'll have sufficient momentum and commitment from the key partners at all levels to have a multi-partnership commitment on the phase out of open burning of waste from Africa that is going to be endorsed during COP27, and hopefully this will lay the basis for action in the coming years and decades. And with that, I would like to call upon all partners at all levels to be part of this process as it has significant climate, environment, health, social, economic impact for African countries. And this will hopefully help other countries to take similar action in the coming years and decades.